Welcome back to another episode of the Four Archetypes. I'm Dr. Lahab Al-Samarrai, and with me, as always, Dr. Lisa Hong is with us. Dr. Eric Tomlinson is missing in action. We hope he feels better and returns to us in one piece. Um, and we're hoping for this war in the Middle East to stop as soon as possible. With those words, we go back into the Arabian Nights. And Dr. Lisa has agreed to do the genie's feat, which is she's gonna read a story. So if everybody bears with us, it's a little lengthy. But we're gonna read the whole story. We're gonna go through it today. Um, and then commentary probably next week before our next episode. Okay, without further ado, Dr. Lisa, take us away.
The Story of the Porter and the Three Women of Baghdad. The story goes, my happy king, that there lived in Baghdad a man, never married, who worked as a porter. As he stood in the market one day, propped on his basket, a woman appeared before him wrapped in a cloak of Mosul silk, her head in a veil the color of tin, scarlet boots at her feet, rainbow laces up her legs and toes in rainbow trim. And under her veil, when she lifted it, were black eyes hooded and fringed with black, shapes to make poets sing with the sweetness in her voice, and she said, Take your basket and come this way. The porter, hardly believing his ears, shouldered his basket in haste. Oh, happy day, he thought, oh, day of grace, and followed her to the door of a house where she knocked. To the man who came down, a Christian, she gave a coin in return for an olive jug of wine, which she set in a basket and said, This way. O day of gifts, said the porter, day of blessings, day of bliss. Basket held high, he followed her until she stopped at a stall of fresh fruit, where she bought a pale apple and musk apples, peaches and jasmine, autumn quinces and Damascus lilies, cucumbers fine as reeds, lemons from the coast, and citrons from the Sultan, myrtle and basil and henna blossom, daffodils and chamomile and anemones and violets and pomegranate flowers. She laid it all in the porter's basket and said, This way. He trailed her to the butcher's where she stopped and said, Cut me 10 pounds of meat, and paid him its price. She gave to her with a little charcoal, and she slipped it into the basket and said, This way. The porter in a daze followed her onto the grocer's, where she found all she needed to season and sweeten her food. Olives pitted with and salted, white cheese and Syrian cheese, pickles sour and sweet, and tarragon. She arranged it all in the basket and said, This way. Then on to the dry grocer's, where she bought shelled pistachios, almonds, walnuts, sugar cane from Iraq, fruit leather from Belek, roasted chickpeas, and all the seeds. She laid the lot in the basket and said, This way. And he obeyed until they came to the confectioner's, where she piled a platter high with every sweet in the shop, honey lattices and almond rings, dumplings filled with cream and spiced with musk, soap cakes, anemone floss, pudding and fritters, amber combs and lady fingers, widow's bread, eat and thanks, judge's bites, pipes of plenty, broth of wind, and delicacies of every description. She lowered it all in the basket. Had you told me, said the porter, I would have bought a mule. But the woman only smiled. Then she was at the druggist, where she bought 10 bottles of scented water, lily, rose, and others, 2 loaves of sugar, a lump of frankincense, aloes wood, ambergris, and musk, and candles of Alexandrian wax. She filled the basket with her spoils and said, This way. The porter followed her and the basket on his shoulder until she came to a tall house fronted by a wide court and with a double door of ebony inlaid with plates of gold. The woman stopped and gave a soft knock. The story goes that as the porter stood beside the buyer at the door, thinking of little but her charm, the polish of her language, and the magic in her face, the doors flew open, He bent to look. There stood a woman, 5 feet of symmetry and grace, a forehead like the sickle moon's blaze, eyes like the eyes of a doe and the gazelle, brows like the crescent of Shaban, red anemones for cheeks, a mouth like Solomon's seal, red lips as native gold, teeth for cheeks, teeth like a line of pearls, a neckline something given to a king, a fountain of a chest, pomegranate breasts, a navel in whose dimple you could sit a drop of balm, and below was a hint of a rabbit without ears. At the sight of this woman, shall we call her the keeper, as she kept the door, the porter nearly lost his mind. He lost his load, and he thought, never in my life was there such a happy day. At the keeper's welcome, the porter followed the buyer inside, into a large hall of elegant design with carvings and compartments, galleries and balconies, niches and benches, booths and with closets, with curtains drawn before them. In the middle was a pool of water where a fountain rose, and at the far end stood a bed of cypress wood and amber, set with gems and hung with the neck of red silk, fixed with the pearls the size of hazelnuts and larger. Behind the net, when it parted, was a woman with glamour about her, the philosopher's grace and the full moon's glow, Babylon eyes and brows taut as bows, a leaf's poise and amber scent and sugar lips, a face to shame the sun, a girl like the galaxy, or a dome of golden filigree, or a bride in her finery, or the glitter of tiles on the floor of a pool, or the glisten of tail in a bowl of soup. She, the owner, rose and met her sisters in the middle of the hall. Why do you stand there? She said. Lift the load off this poor man's head. Together, the keeper before him and the buyer behind, they took the basket down and emptied it, with everything was in its place. Flowers to one side, fruit to the other. They gave the porter a coin and said, be on your way. The story goes, she said, that when the porter considered these women, their beauty and wit, their abundance of wine and meat and fruit and scents and sweets, and no men among them, he was amazed. When he made no movement to go, one of them said, what is it? Have we paid you too little? And to the sister, give him another coin. But the porter said, the wage is more than I deserve, but the way you live concerns me, and how it is that you are here alone without a man. As a table must stand on 4 legs, you 3 need a fourth. And as the pleasure of men falls short without women, so it is for women without men. As the poet says, for pleasure find these 4, zither, lute, harp, and flute. Pair them with 4 more, myrtle, clove, blossom, rose. 4 you must include, wine, a lover, gold, and youth. The women laughed and said, being women, we have secrets, and we fear to reveal them where they may not be kept. We have read somewhere that the Ibn Taman said, keep your secret. If you tell it, you have lost it. If your own heart cannot hold it, how will the heart you gave it to hold? Believe me, said the porter, I am a man of sense and care. I have read books, listened and learned, and cited my sources. I show what is good and conceal what is bad, and I am well behaved. I am, as the poet said, only true souls keep a secret. Only the best heart is sealed. Secrets find in me a bolted house, key lost and lock secure. You know, said the woman, what this table has cost us. What have you to offer in return? We cannot let you stay, gaze at our pretty faces, and drink our wine for free. To which the keeper added, if you have nothing, leave with nothing. Sisters, said the buyer, let him be. I swear to God he served me well today. Another man would not have been so patient. Let me pay his share. The porter kissed the ground in thanks. All I have, he said, is this coin, yours, the first I earned today. Take it back and take me, not as a companion, but as a slave. Sit, said the woman. You are welcome. Then the buyer rose and drew a tighter loop around her waist, tidied up the room and laid the table, strained the wine, arranged the cups and bowls and beakers, the spoons of gold and silver. When the food and drink were spared at the pool's edge, she invited her sisters to sit. The porter among them believed himself in a dream, And the first cup she filled and drank herself, the second for her sister, and the third for the other. Then she poured one for the porter, who said, "Drain the cup only in trusted noble company. Wine is like wind, sweet if breezing over balm, bad if overwrought it blows." "Drink," said the buyer, "and be well. The wine will bring you health, banish the pain, and quicken the cure." And they drank, draining and filling and draining their cups until the porter, full of wine, fell to singing bawdy songs, began to dance, and set upon them with his teeth and his fingers, pinching, prodding. One of them fought back with food, the other with words, the third with flowers, but he was in the fold of pleasure. They went on like this until the wine played in their heads, and when drink had outdone them, the keeper rose and stepped out of her clothes, loosened her hair and let it screen her, and threw herself naked into the pool. Surfacing, the keeper danced in the spray and dipped her head like a duck, filled her mouth with water and shot it at the porter, and washed her breasts and navel and between her thighs. Then she rushed out of the pool and into the porter's lap, pointed to her heat and said, "My lord, my love, what's this?" "Your womb," he said. "Whoa, you have no shame," she said, and cuffed him on the neck. "Your mound," he said. And one sister shouted, "Ugly word," and nipped him. "Your cunt," he said. And the other sister hammered at his chest to cries of "Shame," and knocked him back. "Your sting," he said. And the naked woman smacked him and said, "No." "Your dip," he said. "Your dingle, your disclosure. No, no, no." And every word he said won him a slap and the same question. "What is this?" As this one hammered, that one pinched, and the other prodded him until at last, "What is its name?" "Basil of Bridges," she said. "Basil of Bridges? You could have told me sooner." That the cup was passed around, and then the buyer rose, stripped as her sister had done, threw herself naked into the pool, dipped her head like a duck, and washed her belly and around her breasts, between her thighs. Then she rushed out of the pool into the porter's lap and said, "Heart of my heart, what is this?" "Your mound," he said. She gave him a blow to shake the room and said, "You have no shame." "Your womb," he said. One sister shouted, "Ugly," with a slap. "Your sting," he said. And the other sister cuffed him and said, "Whoa, no shame at all." They went on like this. One pricked, another swatted, and one elbowed him, and he kept trying. And they said, "No, no, no." "Basil of Bridges!" At last he cried, and all three women laughed until they fell, then came down on his neck with blows harder than ever and said, "No." "What is its name?" he said. "The sesame seed, we call it." "Hallelujah, the sesame seed." The buyer dressed, and they laid back to drink, the porter moaning at the pain in his shoulders and his neck. Then the owner, the most beautiful, removed her clothes in turn as the porter rubbed his neck and pleaded, "For the love of God, my neck, my shoulders." The women dove and disappeared into the pool. The porter's eyes settled on her naked form, which was like a slice of moon, and on her face, which was both full moon and yellow dawn, and took in her full length, her breasts and heavy dancing hips, bare as her lord had made her. And he let out an "oh," and these lines: "If I compare your figure to the tender green bough, the lie oppresses me. For boughs all robed in leaf are lovelier, but you unrobed are loveliest to see." The woman at these words rushed out of the pool and into the porter's lap, pointed at her heat, and said, "Light of my eyes, my little liver, what is this?" "Basil of Bridges," he said. "Bah!" "Sesame seed," he said. "Ugh!" "Your womb," he said. "Yo, so little shame," she said, and came down on his neck. To make the story short, my king, it went like this. The porter said, "His name is so and so," and she said, "No, no, no." And when he had his fill of bites and blows, and when his neck was bruised and swollen, he said, "Well, what is its name?" "Hotel Happiness," she said. "Hotel Happiness." She rose and dressed, and they passed the cup between them for a long while, as the porter stood, took off his clothes, a dangling thing between his thighs, and leapt into the pool. The story goes, my king, that when the porter went into the water, he washed himself under the beard and arms. Then he rushed out and fell into the owner's lap, arms in the arms of the keeper and legs in the hands of the buyer, pointed to his penis and said, "Ladies, what is this?" The women laughed, happy that this mischief agreed with theirs. "Your cock," said one. He said, "Ugly shame." "Your penis," said the other. "Have some shame." "Your stick," the other ventured. "No." "Your highness." "No." "Your thing, your sack, your load?" He said, "No, no, no." "What is its name?" they asked. But he came down on one with kisses, one with squeezes, one with nails, and one with teeth. The woman fell over laughing and said, "Brother, what is its name?" "Don't you know?" said the porter. "It's called the roving mule." "What is the meaning of this name?" "It is the one who grazes on the basil of bridges, eats the sesame seeds, and runs wild in hotel happiness." They fell back laughing and went on drinking until night. When it was dark, the women said to the porter, "It is time to put your slippers and show us the breadth of your back." "To part with my soul," he said, "would it be easier? Let us join the night today and go on our way in the morning." "Sisters," said the buyer, "let him stay tonight, and let us laugh and take our pleasure with him. He is full of wit and mischief, and we may not live to meet his like again." "You can stay," they said, "on one condition, that you submit to our command, and that no matter what you see, you ask no questions." "Yes, yes, yes," he said. "Now get up," they said, "and read what it says above the door." He went to the door and found written above in letters of gold, "Speak of what concerns thee not, and burning ears shall be thy lot." And the porter said, "I promise." Then the buyer put the feast together. When they had eaten, they lit the candles, spiked the wax with amber, and burned the aloes wood. And when the fruit and wine were served, they sat again to drink. There they stayed for an hour, drinking and talking and lazing and laughing until they heard a knock at the door. The women were not disturbed, but one of them rose to answer and said on her return, "Our pleasure tonight will be complete." "How so?" "At the door," she said, "are three dervishes, each with a shaven head and face and blind in the right eye, the strangest sight. And by the look of them, they have traveled far to reach Baghdad. Evening gained on them, and being strangers, they have nowhere to sleep and have come to ask the master of the house if he might give them shelter. Each of them, sisters, has the face to make a mourning mother laugh. Why don't we let them in, amuse ourselves tonight, and see them off tomorrow?" The sisters were persuaded on the condition the men asked no questions. She disappeared, satisfied, and returning with three beardless, half-blind men who greeted them, bowed low, and stood back. But the women rose to welcome them, gave thanks for their safety, and invited them to sit. The dervishes bowed again and looked around the room at the table spread with food, the burning candles, smoking incense, fruit, and wine, the women without veils, and said, "By God, this is good." When they saw the porter sprawled and spent, sore after the beating he had taken, they said, "Is he one of us? Arab? Other? A wanderer, no doubt." Straightening, the porter glared at them and said, "None of your business. Have you not seen the words above the door? Speak of what concerns thee, but speak of what concerns thee not, and burning's ears shall be thy lot. And yet ye wag your tongues as soon as you are in." "Mercy," they cried, "our heads are in your hands." The women laughed, made peace among the men, fed the dervishes, and sat around to drink, the keeper filling their cups, until the porter said, "Friends, have you no story to tell us?" The story goes that the dervishes, warm with wine, called for musical instruments. The keeper brought them a tambourine, a flute, and a Persian harp, and each man chose an instrument and tuned it. They began to play, and the women sang with them until they roared. Amid the din came a knock at the door, and the keeper went to look. Now the reason for that knock, my king, was this. On that very night, Caliph Harun al-Rashid had gone into the city with Jafar, his vizier, and was their custom, as was their custom. They happened to pass the house, and they caught the strains of music and women's laughter. The Caliph said, Jafar, I want to meet the people in this house. Commanders of believers, said Jafar, these are people drink has taken over. They do not know who we are, and I fear we may find trouble at their hands. But I must see them, said the Caliph. Find a ruse to get us in. And Jafar said, So be it. He knocked at the door, and when the keeper opened it, he kissed the ground and said, My lady, we are merchants from Mosul, and we have been in Baghdad for 10 days, lodging at Khan. But tonight, the merchant of your city asked us to go home and gave us food and drink, and we gave ourselves to pleasure, called for singers and musicians, and they came. There we stayed to watch the women sing and beat the tambourines and play the flute, and it was very sweet, until we were surprised by the police and tried to flee over the wall. Some of us got hurt and we were detained, and some escaped. We have come to beg for refuge in your home, for we are strangers in the city, afraid to be outside while we are drunk, and our Khan will not be open before dawn. If you are kind and take us in, God will reward you. The keeper, seeing they were dressed with care, repeated Jafar's story to her sisters. They softened and said, Let them in. When the Caliph and Jafar entered the hall, the women rose to greet them. Welcome, said the women. One condition. What condition? That you be eyes without tongues, ask no questions about what you see. They agreed. The women were pleased, and the company fell to their seats and drank deep. The Caliph was amazed by the three dervishes, each blind in right eye, and by the beauty of the women, how fluently they spoke and how freely they gave, and the splendor of their home by contrast with the dervishes. He burned to know, but could not ask. All the while, the talk and drink ran on. The dervishes made music, the cups were passed around. When the wine had done its work, the owner rose, bowed, and took the buyer by the hand. Sister, she said, let us do our duty. So the keeper picked the peels and shells off the table, replaced the incense, cleared the middle of the hall, and sat the dervishes on one side and the Caliph on the other. To the porter she cried, Lazy, come and help me. You're no stranger, but a member of the house. The porter, tightening his belt, said, What shall I do? Stand where you are. Then the buyer set a chair in the hall center, opened a closet, and said to the porter, Give me a hand. In the closet he saw two black dogs with chains around their necks. He took them out and led them to the middle of the hall. It is time to do our duty, said the owner, rolling up her sleeves and picking out a braided whip. To the porter she said, Bring me a dog. He dragged one forward, the dog weeping and shaking her head at the woman, who came down on her with hard blows and beat the howling dog until her arm was sore. Then she dropped the whip and, taking the chain from the porter, held the dog to her chest. They cried together for a while. Then the owner dried the dog's tears and kissed her head. To the porter she said, Take her back and bring me the other. Porter did as he was told, and the mistress did the second dog what she had done to the first, then told the porter to return her to her sister. And when they saw the woman beat the dog to fainting, then weep and kiss her head, the visitors were stunned and fell to whispers. The Caliph's heart burned in his chest to understand, and he motioned to Jafar, but Jafar motioned back that now was not the time. Then, my king, when the owner was done with the beating, the keeper said to her, Now on the bed, let me do my duty. Yes, she said, and climbed onto the bed. Caliph to her right, dervishes and porter to her left, and though the lamps and candles glowed, though the air was sweet with smoke, a darker mood hung on the men. The story goes, my king, that the keeper sat on the chair and said to her sisters, the buyer, Give me my due. The buyer rose, disappeared into the chamber, and brought out a bag of yellow satin with tassels of green silk and beads of amber. Sitting before the keeper, she slid out of it a lute and laid it on her lap, tuned it, and began to play and sing. You are what I crave and desire, your company, eternal sun, your absence, fire. You are my whole life's craze, the one thing in my mind. Love is no crime. The shirt of pain I wore laid bare the grief within. My wet cheeks aired the love I hid. Secrets undone by telltale sobs. Cure me of this hard agony. You are its cause and remedy. The healing hand inflames the hurt. Your bright eyes are the gold I hoard. Your rosy cheeks, assassins. Your hair is my jail. The game is up. A martyrdom of love is mine. Death by sweet swords. How many fine souls meet the same sharp, tender blade? I will not stop loving or seek relief. Love is my law, my drug, inside and out. Happy the eyes that looked at you and one a look returned. Now I am burning, lost. When her song was done, the keeper gave a cry. She moaned and tore her dress apart from neck to hem and fell, all bared and fainting, to the ground. On her body, head to toe, the caliph saw the marks of blows and lashes, skin all black and blue. He said to Jafar, I can wait no longer. I must know why these scars, why these beatings of the dogs, and why the dervishes. But Jafar said, remember, they made it a condition that we ask no questions. Then the buyer rose, slid into the chamber, came out with a dress, and slipped it onto her sister to replace the one she tore. Then her sister said, get me a drink. So she filled the cup and brought it to her. Then the buyer took the lute in her lap and began to sing. If I were to complain, what would I say? Or try to look for love, which way? Or sent a messenger to tell my tale, who could translate this ache? If I attempted patience, no, forebodance after love has flown, nothing but regret and grief, and tears on cheeks. You, now far from sight, will in my heart remain. Was it not with you who taught me how to love, and all of my life from oaths not to stray? When her sister's song was done, and the girl cried and overcome, tore her dress from neck to hem and fell, still moaning, to the ground. Then the buyer went back to the chamber, came out with a dress finer than the first, scattered rose water over his sister's face until she rose, then slipped the dress on her. Sister, said the keeper, finish me off. Only one song remains. And the buyer said, with pleasure, took the lute, unplucked the strings, and sang. How much longer must I face this scorn, this turning back? Have I not wept enough? For how long will I suffer your neglect, savage as hunger? Have you not had enough? Be kind to me. Contempt is hard to take, master. The time has come to treat me better. Gentlemen, have mercy on my heart. All sleep and patience gone. Is the law of love that I should be alone while others love? O Lord, let him be cruel. I am not done. When the keeper heard the third song, she cried out, oh, that's good, and tore her dress and fainted to the ground, revealing on her chest the marks and scars of beating. If only, said the dervishes, we had not come. Better to have slept on heaps of trash and spoil our evening with this sight. And the caliph said, how so? Dear man, they said, we were preoccupied by what we see. Are you not members of the house? The caliph asked. Can you tell me the story of the two black dogs and of this girl? We know nothing, said the dervishes. We never saw this place before tonight. The caliph was amazed and said, the man beside you will know more. The dervishes winked at the porter and asked him what he knew. In love are all alike, said the porter. I was born in Baghdad, but never in my life did I ever enter this house before today. The times I spent with them is wonderful and strange, and I am still amazed that here are women without men. We took you to be one of them, but now we find you are like us. We are 7, said the caliph, the women only 3. Let us put our questions to them, and if they not answer freely, they will be answered by force. All the men agreed, but Jafar, who said, this is not right. Let the women be. We are their guests on a condition we promised to keep. And let us hold our tongues, for little remains of the night, and each of us will soon go his own way. And to the caliph he whispered, this is the last hour of the night. Tomorrow I will bring these girls before you and have them tell their story. But the caliph said, I cannot wait. The dervishes will ask them. This is not right, said Jafar. The company fought over who should ask, at length agreeing on the porter. When the women heard their clamor and said, what's the matter? The porter came forward and said to the owner, my lady, these men beg you to tell them why the dogs, why you beat them, why you kiss them and weep, and they wish to know the story of your sister and why she was flogged with a whip like a man. To the men she asked, the women said, is this true? Yes, they said. Not Jafar. He said nothing. This is bad, the owner said. Did we not tell you our condition? Was it not enough that we let you come into our home and feed you with our food? And still you dare ask. Oh, you have wronged us. She rolled up her sleeves, struck the floor 3 times, and cried, be quick. Then the door opened, and out came 7 slaves with swords. Each of them fell on the guest, struck his face, and threw them to the ground, and tied their arms behind their backs and bound them to each other. Command us, they said, to cut off their heads. Wait, said the owner. I have questions. My lady, said the porter, do not kill me for another's crime. All these men have done you wrong but me. Our day began so well, and our night would have been sweeter still without these dervishes, who have only to enter the city to ruin it. And he wept and said these lines. How fine is the forgiveness of the strong, and finer when it falls on weaker hearts. If friendship ever were a sacred bond, do not cast off the first friend for the last. The women laughed in spite of her anger. To the men she said, tell me who you are and make it quick. You only have little to live. This much is clear to me. If you do not have power, money, or importance, you would not have dared to cross us. For God's sake, said the caliph to Jafar, tell her who we are, or we shall be murdered by mistake. As we deserve, said Jafar. Enough wit. Then the owner approached the dervishes and said, are you brothers? No, they said, we are beggars. Were you born, she said, with one bad eye? No, she said, the strangest twist of fate has brought me to this state. If you were to carve it with a needle in the corner of your eye, it would be a warning to the wise. The others, when she asked, gave the same answer. Each of us, they said, is from a different city, and each is the son of a king. Then each of you, she said, will tell his story. To those who do can pass their hand over their head and go in peace, and those who don't shall lose it. And the story goes that the first to come forward was the porter, who said, my lady, as you know, I am here because I am a porter who was hired by this buyer, who led me from the vintner to the butcher, to the butcher to the grocer, from the grocer to the fruit seller, from the fruit seller to the dry grocer, on to the confectioner, and then to the druggist, and then to this house. This is my story. Pass your hand over your head, she said, and go. Then the first dervish came forward and said, then we end here.
Okay. So powerful story. Very powerful story. And we will continue this story. We will continue talking about the story starting next week, the beginning of next week's episode, before we go into the tale of the first dervish. Um, so with that, um, any thoughts, Dr. Lisa, before we
We've
sign off
only
today?
begun.
Huh?
Just the beginning of the story, setting, staging the setting and the people. Let's see. We know nothing.
All right. So we keep the secrets
Yeah.
until next week, and we will reveal our secrets for you next week about this story. So we are the IFC, and we are not afraid. I am not afraid, Dr.
I am
Lees.
not afraid.
And we are the IFC, and we are not afraid. And we are not afraid of peace. Have a
Mhm.
good one, and we will talk to you next week.